So for a second, I want to take you back in time and think of the year you were in high school, the last year actually. Think of the time you were preparing for the national exams. You were studying so many of your weekends, wondering whether you've studied enough or you should study a little bit more. And then, a few months later, the big day arrived. You got into the school, you entered the classroom, you got the subject and the exams in front of you, you glanced over it. And some of you, maybe you were relieved because you studied everything. Some others, maybe you were a little bit more stressed because that was a couple of things you actually skipped. No matter what, however, you were out of the classroom a few hours later. Maybe happy, maybe uncertain, or maybe sad. No matter what, you got the results a few years later and you got into the university, which I guess brings many of you here today. So now I would like you to pause for a second and think about how did you decide to narrate this story. Did you decide to be a hero? Did you decide to be a victim? Or did you choose to be a bystander? Switching gears a little bit, I would like to ask you to remember something along these lines though, but it would be a Saturday night that you decided to stay in and order. Do you remember what food did you choose to order? Which restaurant did you order from? Did the food arrive on time? Did you like the experience and would you order from this place again? So the reason for taking you alongside this memories journey is a class I had during my MBA, which was all about the memories and the stories in our life, that the way we remember them and put them together is actually what defines us as unique individuals and actually create our stories. We are the stories we tell others about ourselves. And the way we fit everything together is what defines us as a unique individual. But our stories are unique to us, and they're just that, stories. They're just personal narratives constructed out of recollections from our past. A great deal of freedom on how we can fit everything together into this story. We can choose which stories to fit together and how to make the story out, which memories to put together and how to make a memory out of those. But what is very important is what is the context and the phase we are in, because based on that is what we choose to remember and how we choose to remember. And remember from the previous example, the way we decide to narrate the story also matters. What I also find interesting is that the stories and these memories, that they are so unique and possibly defining to us, they could also be data points for some others, and then these data points can again become stories in order to make sense of the information. If we take, for example, the day you stayed and you ordered in, you can realize that the whole experience and the memory of you ordering in and whether you liked it, whether you order again, is a data point in the order log of a food delivery company. But then again, the team and the management team of the company will take this information and create a story out of this to understand the consumers and make sense of like what can they do more and what can they do better. But the same way we need to have a way and we need to have a guide to create a story using our memories, so do companies also need to have some structure and a vision and a question in order to take this information and make sense out of this. Otherwise, the information is not very helpful. It's just data, and they don't necessarily have a lot of meaning. So a company would need to have a vision, would need to have a question, would need to have something that guides them in order to understand what information should I collect and how to interpret this information, and does this information take me towards the path and the way I want to. And I think there is a proper process around this, actually. You start with a vision, with a question, something you want to achieve. Then you start collecting the data, you structure the information, you combine the data together, and you try to fit the data and the information with multiple ways, actually. You analyze them. You try to review the findings, and you see whether does it make sense? Does it fit what I'm looking for? You make adjustments, maybe changes, maybe you scrap it and you start all over again. And you do this loop again and again all the time. Every time it gets you closer to the goal, and every time it gets you closer to where you want to be. This was exactly the same way and pattern we decided to build JOKR with my co-founders. We started in March 2021, and we had a vision to reinvent and revolutionize retail. We operated and we launched within 9 months in 8 different countries. We had 13 cities, and we had over 4,000 employees. Our vision and what united all of us was, how can we give the best retail experience to our consumers? How can we make sure that we know what consumers want, when they need it, before they even think about it? How can we know whether they want to order snacks for their Saturday evening in to watch the football game, or order toilet paper because they're just about to run out of? And we had, as I mentioned before, to find a process and a way of how we can combine this information, how can we collect the data, how we put everything together, and how we fit this information together to start making sense of what we have available. It's definitely not an easy process, and it takes a lot of iterations, and every time you learn a lot along the way. We also needed to have a platform, which in our case was our app, that can help us take this data and actually tell a story for the consumer, something that is unique, something that is meaningful to them, to move through the funnel and place the order at the end. And over time, we kept on learning more information. We started making a lot more sense of this data and information. We even knew, what are we looking for? What is the direction we want to go? We made a lot of mistakes, but even those mistakes were what made us realize, are we going the right way, or should we change completely? And context was so important, because in our business, what you order can have a very, very different meaning depending on the geography, the day, the time. There is so many different uses of a specific order that you need this information. You need the context to make sense of the data and how to interpret them and what story to take out of them. However, there are also events and outliers along this journey that we had very little influence on and were very critical into our path, then forced us to change the direction. So in our case, that was 2022, the beginning of the year, and the macro environment changed completely and shifted almost overnight or over a few months. Investors were very hesitant in investing into business models like ours. I think they probably had their own stories based on some data in why they want to do this and why they take this decision. But in our case, that meant that we have to adjust our path. We had to go through this loop and make very significant changes in order to survive and in order to continue going through our vision. And that meant for us exiting the US and focusing in Latin America, and then later on even exiting certain countries in Latin America to focus on Brazil. What is the most important is that we still had a great vision to guide us, and we still had a lot of flexibility into how can we use what we have available to continue building something great. Similar to how data was for JOKR's vision, so are memories for crafting our own life and our path in life. They are very essential moments for us to understand what's happening and how can we take the best action towards the future. Every one of us has a very unique perspective and culture, which then leads us to create a very unique story, which then also leads to creating a very unique trajectory for our lives. If I take you back to the Panellini's example you just remembered, whether you succeeded or whether you succeeded to the extent you expected to succeed, that experience taught you a lot about yourself and who you are. You learned about how can you perform under pressure, which subjects are you good at, what can you do better next time. It was an incredible insight to learn better yourselves. And so was actually the macro environment change for our JOKR company. No matter that we had to take tough decisions, it still forced us to become more efficient. We doubled down on creating a very strong value proposition for the consumers. We upskilled our team. And then also, it forced us even to actually expand into new business lines and verticals that was actually very beneficial for our business. Even in my personal life, I find that my memories help me so much understand better about myself. And if I even double-click and look deeper, I can even say that these memories and stories, then even they organize themselves into chapters. And each chapter is very unique, very defining, helps me better understand who I am and how can I move more successfully going forward. They can range all the way from being a professional handball athlete to becoming an entrepreneur and starting JOKR. So each chapter and their memories help me learn a lot about myself, what I like, what can I do differently next time, what are my strengths, what matters to me, and why. And if I take, for example, the chapter that was about playing handball with my team, the discipline, the consistency, and the dedication demanded by the games and the training, as well as the trust and collaboration among the teammates, was the foundation of how we worked together as a team while we were building JOKR. And later on at JOKR, the bold vision, how we managed to work with people from so different cultures together, the speed of execution we had, as well as our agility to learn and change direction where needed, will be fundamentals in the way I run any business going forward in the future. Even the challenges, ranging from having to close down many of the markets we spent so much effort and time building, or the time I had to spend on the road that was over 10 months, taught me so much about myself and how I can do things better and more efficiently in the future. And with that, I would like to close and invite you to think about your own lives. What is your vision? What memories do you choose to remember and how you fit everything together? How do you deal with setbacks? And how do you take context into account? Remember, you do have the option to choose how you narrate the story. You can be a victim, you can be a hero, or you can be a bystander. And I'll close with some thoughts here and say that if you choose to be a hero, you miss out on what you can improve on. If you choose to be a victim, you miss out on your strengths. So my advice would be that you choose to be knowledgeable and caring bystander, your own best friend, somebody who knows you intimately and has the best intentions for you. Thank you.